Welcome to Stoic Philosophy for Life. This is not just a place to listen to books, it's a space to feel them with your soul. Here, we illuminate your mind with timeless lessons. Awaken your inner strength, cultivate self-minded discipline, and guide your journey of personal growth. Every word is carefully chosen to reach what you're truly seeking: peace, clarity, and lasting transformation. If this feels like the place for you, hit subscribe and walk this path with us every single day. Now, put on your headphones, take a deep breath, and begin the journey of renewing your mind and your life.
T15. The power of not reacting, how to control your emotions. Have you ever felt like someone's words or actions ruined your entire day? A rude comment, a missed call, a look you interpreted the wrong way. Suddenly your heart races, your stomach tightens, and without thinking you react sharp, defensive, emotional. But what if I told you that moment, that tiny gap between stimulus and response, is where your entire power lives? We live in a world that celebrates reaction. Outrage sells. Attention follows emotion, and the more reactive you are, the more alive you seem. But the truth is, reactivity is not strength, it is slavery. Because the more reactive you are, the more control you give away. You become a puppet to whatever triggers you, a servant to whatever someone else says or does. And that is the surest way to lose peace, to lose clarity, to lose yourself. This video is not about pretending emotions do not exist. It is about owning them instead of being owned by them. Because emotional mastery does not mean you never feel, it means you choose how to respond no matter how you feel. It means reclaiming the space between the match and the fire. If you stay with me until the end, I will share 10 timeless Stoic truths, practical insights, and modern tools that will help you stop reacting. Start responding and regain command over your emotional life. And by the end, you will not just understand why it matters, you will feel it. You will walk through life steadier, calmer, unshaken by things that used to throw you off center. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who lived as a slave before becoming a teacher, said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgment about those things." Think about that. The event is neutral. It is your interpretation that ignites the storm. Someone cuts you off in traffic. That is a fact. But the rage, the tension, the story you tell yourself, they disrespected me, they think they are better, they always do this, that is what lights the fire. Reactivity is the product of unconscious beliefs. We react because we feel threatened, because we feel unseen, unworthy, unloved. And so we defend. We lash out, we retreat, we try to control, but in doing so, we lose the only thing we ever had control over: our inner world. That is what the Stoics wanted to protect. Not pride, not ego, but the stillness inside. Imagine someone throws a rock into a still lake. The surface ripples, but the depths remain undisturbed. That is what non-reactivity feels like. It is not numbness, it is depth. It is knowing that not every splash deserves a storm, that most things do not require your energy, that silence is often stronger than the last word. You have to ask yourself, what am I reacting to? The present moment or the pain it reminds me of? Because most reactions are not about now, they are echoes of the past. A comment that touches an old wound, a look that reminds you of rejection, a delay that triggers your need for control, and the more unaware you are of those triggers, the more power they have over you. This is where awareness becomes your shield. Every time you pause instead of explode, every time you breathe instead of bite back, every time you observe instead of absorb, you reclaim that power. You prove to yourself, I am not a slave to my impulses. I can feel deeply and still choose wisely. If this message moved, you share it with someone who needs it. There is nothing weak about walking away from conflict. There is nothing passive about choosing peace. The strongest person in the room is not the loudest. It is the one who can stay centered when everyone else is spinning. That strength is not inherited. It is trained. It is earned. It is remembered when you return to yourself instead of reacting to the world. Control. It is the drug of the anxious, the illusion of the fearful, the trap of the reactive mind. We think if we can control people's words, their tone, their timing, their choices, we will finally feel safe. Finally feel enough. But no matter how hard you try, you cannot control what someone else thinks, says, or does. You can only control your response. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner peace returns. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Yet most people spend their lives trying to reverse that truth, trying to shape the world instead of shaping themselves, trying to manage circumstances instead of mastering their mindset. That is why they are exhausted, because they are at war with reality, and you cannot win a war against what is. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means releasing the illusion that control equals safety. It means trusting that your strength lies not in micromanaging life, but in meeting it as it comes with poise, with clarity, with grace. It means asking what is mine to hold and what is not, because when you try to carry what was never yours, you become heavy with frustration. You see, reactivity often hides control. That sharp reply, it is trying to control how you are perceived. That silence, it is trying to control how much you feel. That overthinking, it is trying to control an outcome that is already beyond your reach. The mind convinces you, if I just worry enough, plan enough, protect enough, I will avoid pain. But worry is not protection, it is prediction. And most of the time, it is wrong. So what happens when you stop trying to control? At first, you feel vulnerable, exposed, but then free, lighter, clearer. You stop defending your pride. You stop reacting to every opinion. You stop needing things to go your way just to feel okay. And in that space, something ancient awakens, a steadiness, a calm so deep that the chaos around you no longer dictates the calm within you. Think of a mountain in the wind. It does not resist. It does not tremble. It allows the wind to pass and still remains. You can be that mountain, but only if you stop chasing control. Only if you trust that who you are is bigger than what happens around you. If you are still here listening, then like me, you are probably done with living passively. Look back at your last 3 decisions. Did they move you forward? Or were they just reactions to someone else's chaos? Did they reflect your values or your fears? Because this is what it means to live deliberately. Not to force outcomes, but to face them. Not to resist what comes, but to meet it with the full presence of who you have chosen to become. Every breath you take is a chance to return, to choose again, to let go, not to float, but to stand rooted in what is real. Let go not because you do not care, but because you care too much to keep losing yourself. There is a moment, a space so small most people never notice it, a heartbeat between what happens and how you respond. It is in that pause where everything is decided, your peace, your dignity, your power. But most people skip it. They go straight from trigger to reaction like a firework set off without warning. Words fly, tempers rise, damage spreads, and all because the pause was never claimed. But what if you trained yourself to live in that space, to breathe in the fire instead of feeding it, to observe the emotion instead of becoming it? That is where real power begins, not in suppression, but in separation. The separation between the event and your identity, between the feeling and your action. The Stoics were obsessed with this space. Epictetus taught, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. He was not saying you should never feel angry. He was reminding you that reacting is a choice, not a command. That you are not the slave of your instincts, you are the master of your reason. That space, the pause, is your protection. When someone says something hurtful, you do not have to swing back. When things go wrong, you do not have to spiral. When fear rises, you do not have to obey it. In that pause, you ask, what is true? What is wise? What outcome do I actually want? And more often than not, the answer is not to fight, but to remain. This is not weakness. This is restraint, the highest form of strength. Because anyone can explode, anyone can lash out, but it takes discipline to breathe, to delay the ego, to answer from your higher self rather than your wounded one. Think of a storm, the lightning, the thunder, the chaos, but at the center of every storm is a calm, the I, still, silent, untouched. You can be that I, but you must practice the pause. And it is a practice. It will not come naturally at first. You will forget. You will fall. But over time, the gap gets wider, the silence gets stronger, and in that silence, your character is built. This is not about becoming passive. It is about becoming precise. Because when you pause, you no longer waste your energy on battles that do not matter. You no longer give your peace to people who never earned it. You no longer allow temporary emotions to make permanent decisions. So when something triggers you today, stop, breathe, find the gap, feel the fire but do not throw it. Stand in the eye of your storm and watch as everything around you loses its power to pull you out of yourself. The pause is not empty. It is full of power, of freedom of choice. And it is always there waiting for you to remember. Every day, life gives you 100 reasons to react. A message left on read, a rude customer, a partner's sharp tone, an unexpected problem. And in those moments, your mind will rush in with old scripts, old wounds, old patterns. Say something back. Make them pay. Prove your point. It feels automatic, like you have no choice. But you do, because reaction is a habit. Response is a decision, and only one of them leads to strength. The Stoics taught that your greatest freedom is your ability to choose how you respond to life. Not just when things go well, but especially when they do not. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." It sounds simple, but it is the hardest lesson to live. Because to respond instead of react, you have to interrupt your ego. You have to override the part of you that wants to win every argument, defend every wound, prove every point. But here is the paradox: when you always react, you lose control. You lose clarity. You lose credibility. People stop listening. Opportunities slip. Trust breaks. All because you gave your power to the first emotion that showed up. Responding is different. It does not mean you do nothing. It means you do the right thing at the right time for the right reason. Responding is strategic. It is measured. It is thoughtful. You do not let emotions choose your words. You let wisdom choose your timing. Imagine a warrior who unsheathes their sword every time someone looks at them the wrong way. That is what reactivity looks like, an undisciplined force. But the warrior who waits, who watches, who chooses their moment with precision, that is power. That is what you are training for. In practical terms, this means when you feel the surge, pause. Name the feeling. Ask, what outcome do I want from this? And what would the strongest version of me do next? Sometimes the answer is silence. Sometimes it is kindness. Sometimes it is walking away. But every time the answer is yours to choose, not your emotions. Reactivity may feel satisfying in the moment, but response builds a life. It builds trust. It builds respect. It builds the kind of person others look to, not for drama, but for direction. You do not need to prove your strength by reacting. Prove it by remaining composed, by rising above, by staying steady while others spiral. Because in the end, no one remembers what triggered you. They remember how you handled it. They remember your grace or your fire. And every day you are building that memory, one decision at a time. So stop letting the world push your buttons like you are a machine. You are not a reaction. You are a response. Calm, clear, chosen. It is easy to blame the world for how we feel. Easy to point at someone else's tone, someone else's mistake, someone else's failure to meet our expectations and say, that is why I am upset. But if you look closely, really look, you will see the truth. The most dangerous triggers are not outside of you. They are within. They are the beliefs you never questioned, the stories you keep repeating, the emotional traps you built long before anyone else arrived. Every person walks through life carrying invisible scripts. I am not enough. People always leave. If I do not defend myself, I will be walked over. These scripts are not facts. They are wounds that were never healed. And when something in the present touches them, we do not see clearly, we relive. We confuse now with then, and we react not to what is happening, but to what we are afraid it means. Marcus Aurelius warned himself often, do not let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. Stick with the present situation. He understood what many forget: most of our suffering is not caused by reality, it is caused by our interpretation of it, by the lens we refuse to clean, by the emotion we refuse to own. Reactivity thrives in unconsciousness. It feeds on unresolved pain. That is why self-awareness is not optional, it is armor. If you do not know what triggers you, you will keep thinking other people are the problem. If you do not know your patterns, you will keep repeating them and calling it fate. But once you start seeing clearly, you stop blaming, you start healing. So the next time you feel a strong emotional wave, pause and ask, what am I really reacting to? Is it this moment, or is it something older, something deeper? Am I responding to what they said or what I heard it meant? Because unless you question it, your mind will turn discomfort into a story, and that story will rule you. The Stoics were not emotionless, they were emotionally intelligent. They did not suppress the storm, they studied it. They observed their own minds with the same precision a soldier observes the battlefield. And that is how they won, not by overpowering others, but by understanding themselves. Do the same. Learn your patterns. Study your reactivity. Notice what pulls you out of alignment. Is it rejection? Is it disrespect? Is it the fear of being misunderstood? Once you know the trap, you stop walking into it. You start building responses instead of repeating reactions. This is what it means to be strong, not to feel nothing, but to understand everything. To walk into your own mind and disarm the enemy before it strikes. Because your greatest battles are not with the world. They are with the parts of you that have not yet healed. And once you stop running from them, you will stop reacting to everything else. You do not need to carry everything. Not every slight deserves your attention. Not every disagreement needs your energy. Not every wound requires reopening. And yet most people walk through life overloaded, not with physical things, but with emotional baggage they refuse to release. Old arguments, unspoken resentments, imagined futures, 1,000 tiny weights that build into exhaustion. The Stoics understood this long before psychology gave it a name. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. If it is not yours, do not carry it. That is emotional minimalism, a quiet, powerful discipline of carrying only what is yours to carry and putting the rest down. The modern world tells you to feel everything, express everything, react to everything, but that is not liberation. It is chaos. Strength is not the constant expression of emotion. Strength is discernment. It is knowing which emotions to trust and which to let pass like clouds in the sky. It is knowing which thoughts to believe and which to observe like passing noise. When you stop reacting to everything, people will misunderstand you. They will say you are cold, that you do not care, but the truth is, you care deeply. You just no longer leak that care into places that drain you. You choose where your energy goes. You choose who gets your peace. That is not indifference. That is mastery. Ask yourself right now, what am I holding that no longer belongs to me? What pain have I normalized? What memory am I replaying that only reopens wounds? What imagined future am I suffering for in advance? Because every ounce of unnecessary emotion robs you of clarity. And clarity is peace. You do not need to react to every criticism. You do not need to respond to every challenge. You do not need to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. When you adopt emotional minimalism, you stop playing tug-of-war with people who thrive on chaos. You drop the rope. You walk away, not because you are weak, but because peace is heavier than pride. If you are still listening, then you are someone who has carried too much for too long. You are tired not just in body, but in soul. And that tiredness is not weakness. It is a signal. It is your inner wisdom saying it is time to let go. Time to protect your energy like it is sacred, because it is. Start small. Let go of one thought, one grudge, one internal argument that plays on repeat. Practice emotional minimalism like a form of meditation, like cleansing, like returning to who you were before the world told you to hold everything at once. Because what is essential is rarely heavy, and what is heavy is rarely essential. Most people never really see themselves. What they see is a reflection distorted by noise from the past, from other people's opinions, from fear, from ego. They react not to what is happening, but to what they believe it says about them. And without realizing it, they live a life of mirrors, never knowing which one is telling the truth. But stillness is the mirror that does not lie. It does not flatter. It does not judge. It simply reflects. When you stop reacting, when you slow down enough to observe instead of defend, something powerful happens. You start to see clearly. You see the gap between who you are and who you have been pretending to be. You see the wounds you have been covering with anger. You see the pride you have mistaken for power. And you see how often you have given your peace away in the name of being right. Marcus Aurelius spent his mornings in reflection, not because he was weak, but because he knew that unchecked thoughts become patterns and patterns become fate. He wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, the quality of your life depends on the quality of your thinking, and you cannot change what you do not see. Reactivity clouds the mirror. When you are angry, you cannot see straight. When you are triggered, your vision narrows. The world feels hostile, people seem against you, and you act from that distorted state, saying things you regret, doing things you wish you could undo. But when you choose stillness, you clean the mirror. You see your reflection, not the one you wish was there, but the one that is. Honest, unfiltered, true. That kind of honesty is not always comfortable, but it is freeing. Because once you see what is really there, you can begin. You can stop pretending. You can stop performing. You can stop reacting to protect the image and start responding to nurture the truth. Stillness is not silence. Stillness is presence. It is the space where you can ask, what am I actually feeling? What is beneath this reaction? What am I trying to protect? And most importantly, who am I becoming if I keep living like this? Because you are always becoming. Every thought, every emotion, every decision is shaping you. The question is, are you shaping yourself consciously, or are you letting reactivity sculpt you into someone you never meant to be? Let the mirror of stillness show you. Let it reveal the truth you have been avoiding, and let that truth become your foundation, not to judge yourself, but to rebuild from clarity. You do not need to be perfect, but you do need to be honest, because only the honest can grow, only the still can see, and only the aware can truly respond instead of endlessly react. You think the trigger is the enemy. That sharp word, that forgotten text, that moment when someone ignores you, disrespects you, overlooks you. You feel it in your chest, your gut, your fists, and your first instinct is to fight it, to shut it down, to make it go away. But what if the trigger was not here to hurt you, but to teach you? The Stoics believed nothing happens to you, it happens for you. That every moment, no matter how uncomfortable, is a chance to practice strength, to choose clarity, to refine your soul. Epictetus said, difficulties show a person's character. Therefore, when trouble comes, think of it as training. What if every trigger was training, every moment of discomfort an invitation to grow? The truth is, a trigger is not about what is said or done. It is about what still lives inside you, the pain you have not healed, the belief you still carry, the version of you that you thought you buried but still whispers in the dark. You were not just hurt, you were made aware. And that awareness, that is the beginning of transformation. So when the next trigger comes, and it will pause, not to avoid but to observe, ask, why does this hurt? What story am I telling myself right now? What is this reaction trying to protect? You will start to see the patterns, the moments that always light your fuse, the faces that always bring back the same emotion. You will begin to decode your emotional system, not to suppress it, but to understand it. Because you cannot master what you will not face, and you cannot heal what you refuse to see. Triggers are not threats, they are messages. And when you stop reacting to them, you can start listening. Listening to what needs attention, what needs forgiveness, what needs to be let go. And in that stillness, you grow. You stop needing to be right all the time. You stop demanding apologies that will never come. You stop waiting for others to fix what only you can. That is emotional adulthood. That is the work most people avoid because it is easier to point outward than to look inward. But only the inward path leads to peace. If you are still here listening, then you are not running anymore. You are ready to turn your pain into power. You are ready to meet your reactions with reflection. You are not just seeking calm, you are becoming it. And that is rare. That is strength. So the next time life pokes the wound, say thank you, not because it feels good, but because now you can see it. And what is seen can be healed. What is understood can be released. What is owned can finally be transformed. Triggers are not interruptions. They are invitations. And you are ready to answer. Pride wants to win. Peace wants to understand. Pride needs the last word. Peace needs no word at all. And everyday life will offer you a choice between your pride and your peace. Most people choose pride because pride feels like power. It feels like standing tall, like defending your worth, like never backing down. But often pride is just fear in disguise. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of appearing weak. The Stoics knew this trap. They knew that ego is loud, but wisdom is quiet. That silence is not surrender, it is strength. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. You do not have to mirror ignorance. You do not have to match energy. You do not have to win every argument to prove your value. Sometimes the most powerful move is to simply walk away calm, clear, and untouched. But why is it so hard? Because pride thrives on reaction. It feeds on drama. It wants you to fight, to explain, to correct, to convince. It wants you in the mud. But peace walks around the mud entirely. Peace says, my energy is too sacred for this. Peace says, this is not worth losing myself over. Ask yourself, when was the last time you chose pride and felt regret? Said something sharp and wished you could pull it back? Stayed in the conflict just to win? Now ask, when was the last time you chose peace and felt ashamed of it? Rarely, if ever, because peace, unlike pride, leaves no mess behind. This is not about weakness. It is about knowing where your power actually lives. Not in domination, not in being right, but in being unmoved, in being so deeply rooted in your truth that someone else's chaos cannot shake you. In choosing your inner world over their outer noise. You do not need to clap back. You do not need to explain your silence. You do not need to shrink to make others feel comfortable. Just choose peace and let your energy do the talking, because nothing is louder than a person who is calm in the face of provocation. The next time someone tries to pull you into their storm, ask yourself, is this about truth or is this about ego? Is this about resolution, or is it about control? And if it is the latter, you already know your answer. Step back, stay centered, let them spin. You are not obligated to join. And here is the truth. Walking away does not mean you lost. It means you won against your ego, your reactivity, your need for external validation. That is the real victory. That is the kind of peace no one can take from you because you did not get it from them. You built it. You earned it. You chose it. So keep choosing it over and over until it becomes who you are. There is a kind of strength that never raises its voice, a kind of power that does not need to be seen. It is not found in muscles, in money, in titles. It is found in the quiet discipline of emotional control, the kind of control that allows you to walk through chaos without absorbing it, the kind that lets you feel everything but still choose your response. That is emotional mastery. And like any form of mastery, it is not given, it is trained. Most people think emotional control means feeling nothing, but it is the opposite. It means you feel everything and still remain centered. It means you allow anger, but do not be led by it. You hear fear, but do not obey it. You acknowledge disappointment, but you do not collapse beneath it, because emotional strength is not suppression. It is sovereignty. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Let that sink in. You can have all the freedom in the world, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, but if your emotions control you, you are still a prisoner. A prisoner to the past, a prisoner to triggers, a prisoner to every person who knows how to push your buttons. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people do not need to defeat you. They just need to provoke you. Because if you cannot control your reactions, you give them control. You hand over the keys to your peace. You let their chaos become your identity. That is not strength. That is surrender, dressed as emotion. So how do you train? Like any warrior, with consistency, with structure, with intention. First, you create space. That space between stimulus and response, that is your battlefield. And your first weapon is awareness. Notice the surge. Name the feeling. Watch it like a wave. Because what you can observe, you do not have to become. Second, you practice detachment. This does not mean indifference. It means separation. You are not your anger. You are not your anxiety. You are not your story. You are the one watching it. When you remember that your reactions begin to loosen their grip, you stop living from emotion and start living from vision. Third, you build your inner rituals. The Stoics had their daily disciplines: journaling, meditation, premeditatio malorum, gratitude. Not because they were trying to control the world, but because they were training for it. They were rehearsing their values, so when life tested them, they would not fall. What are your rituals? Do you start your day with clarity or chaos? Are you preparing your mind like a soldier prepares for battle? Or are you just hoping you will not break when pressure comes? Because pressure will come. That is not a threat. That is life. You will be misunderstood. You will be disrespected. You will be let down. The only question is, will you react blindly or respond wisely? The answer depends on how much training you have done before the moment arrives. Emotional discipline is not about acting robotic. It is about learning to act with intention. To be able to say, "I feel this, but I will not let it define what I do next." That is the mark of the mentally strong. They do not need ideal conditions to stay balanced. They bring their own balance with them. Imagine a soldier on the battlefield. The enemy shouts, the noise is deafening, but he does not fire blindly. He does not run into the open. He breathes, he waits. He remembers his training. He acts from skill, not impulse. That is who you must become, not just in conflict with others, but in conflict with yourself. Because most of your battles are internal. The urge to lash out, the temptation to shut down, the storm of self-doubt that creeps in at 2 a.m. These are your opponents. And every time you choose the higher response, you win a small battle. And enough of those small battles, that becomes your character. That becomes your legacy. Let me ask you something. In the last argument you had, who was really in control, you or your emotion? In the last stressful situation, did your values guide you, or did your fear take the wheel? These are not questions to shame you. They are checkpoints, because every day life is showing you what you still need to train. If you are still here, then you are not someone who wants a shortcut. You are someone who is ready to build mental strength that cannot be shaken by moods, to build emotional depth that does not crack under pressure, to build a mind that is not led by the noise outside but by the voice of wisdom within. This is not a weekend practice, it is a lifetime commitment, like brushing your teeth, like showing up to train even when you are tired, because emotional mastery is not about one big moment. It is about 100 small ones stacked quietly, patiently, with discipline. So the next time you feel the fire rising in your chest, remember that fire is not your enemy. It is your signal. It is your chance to practice, to become the kind of person who does not burn down relationships just because something sparked inside, to become the kind of person who is not a slave to the world, but a student of it. You will slip. You will react. You will fail. That is part of the path. But if you keep showing up, if you keep practicing the pause, keep studying your own mind, keep choosing your response, you will become something rare. Not just someone who talks about emotional control, but someone who embodies it. And when that happens, people will notice. Not because you are louder, but because you are quieter. Because your presence speaks louder than your reactions ever did. Because you have become the calm in the storm, not the cause of it. Have you ever noticed how cruel your own mind can be, not to others but to you? That voice that whispers just loud enough to distract your progress. It reminds you of every mistake, questions every decision, magnifies every flaw. It says things to you that you would never say to a friend or even a stranger. And yet you believe it. You obey it. You call it truth. But what if that voice was not your wisdom, but your wound? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And if your inner world is painted with shame, fear, and doubt, do not be surprised when everything you do feels heavy, because your thoughts are not neutral. They are the architects of your actions. The quiet commands behind every habit, every retreat, every self-inflicted limitation. You do not need more motivation. You need a new relationship with your thoughts. Not to silence them, but to challenge them. To stop letting your inner dialogue run on autopilot like a bitter narrator, because most of what it says is not wisdom, it is memory. Echoes of voices you absorbed in childhood, in failure, in pain. Left unchallenged, they become your compass, but they point nowhere, or worse, they point backward. So how do you shift it? Not through affirmations taped to mirrors, through awareness. When the voice says you always mess this up, pause. Ask, is that true or just familiar? When it says you are not ready, respond with, maybe I am afraid, but readiness is built through action. You will not silence that voice overnight, but you can stop obeying it, and in doing so, you weaken its grip. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Most of your limitations live in your mind, not the world. You assume others see you the way you judge yourself, but they do not. People rarely see your deepest insecurities. You do. You feel them. You give them names. You assign them power, and they become your cage. But only if you let them. Imagine your mind as a courtroom. Your negative voice is the loud prosecutor, always pointing, accusing, remembering every misstep. But where is your defense? Where is the part of you that stands up and says that is not the whole story? You must build it, train it, because without it the trial is over before it begins. This is not about lying to yourself. It is about learning to advocate for yourself. To speak the truth with strength, to say, I made a mistake, but I am not a mistake. To say, I am scared, but I will move forward anyway. To say, I am learning, and that is enough for today. If you are still here listening, then you know the war is not out there. It is in your head, and no one can fight it for you. But you are not powerless. You are not broken. You are just untrained. And this training begins with a single question: whose voice is shaping my life? From this point on, treat your inner dialogue like a sacred garden. Do not let weeds of doubt grow unchecked. Do not let the careless opinions of others take root. Speak with intention. Listen with clarity. And when the old voice returns, and it will greet it like an old habit, not a current truth. Because you are not your thoughts. You are the one who hears them. And the one who hears them has a choice, a voice, a will, a power. And that is the end of self-sabotage, not when the voice disappears, but when you stop mistaking it for who you are. There comes a moment, quiet, subtle, when you realize that no one is coming to save you. Not because the world is cruel, but because you were never meant to be rescued. You were meant to rise, to face your mind, to carry your own fire, to become what you were always capable of becoming. That moment is the final gate, and once you step through it, there is no turning back. The Stoics never promised comfort. They promised clarity. Marcus Aurelius, burdened with power and surrounded by chaos, still wrote, "If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining," because he understood resistance wastes energy. Complaining changes nothing. Reaction burns fuel. But calm conserves power. Calm is control. And in the final gate, control of your own soul is all that matters. Everything you have learned up until now has led here. The breath before the reaction. The pause between trigger and choice. The voice that speaks clarity over fear. The mirror of self-awareness. The art of letting go. The strength to stand alone. These are not separate lessons. They are parts of the same armor, worn not to hide who you are, but to protect what matters most. Confidence rooted in values. Discipline rooted in peace. A mind trained to observe instead of obey. That is the soul of this philosophy. And if you live it, really live it, it will not just change how you think. It will change who you are. You will stop chasing applause. You will stop fearing silence. You will no longer feel the need to prove your worth, because you will have built it privately, consistently through action, not affirmation. You will walk through this world not untouched by chaos, but unmoved by it. Not because you are numb, but because you are grounded. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. No more waiting, no more excuses, no more hoping life will finally be easy. Instead, clarity, action, responsibility. You already know what you must become. You already know what you must leave behind. The question now is not whether you understand. It is whether you are willing to begin. Because this is where transformation truly begins, not in understanding new ideas, but in embodying ancient ones. Not in hearing another truth, but in choosing to live one deeply. You do not need more motivation. You need decision. You need motion. You need to wake up every day and say, "I will no longer be ruled by impulses I do not respect. I will act from purpose, not panic, from stillness, not noise, from courage, not comfort." And that is the final gate, not an ending, but an opening. A life of awareness, a life of presence, a life that no longer seeks to escape discomfort, but to master it. You will still feel doubt, you will still feel fear, but you will meet those emotions not as enemies, but as teachers, and you will move anyway. If you made it this far, it is because you are ready, not perfect, not fearless, but ready. Ready to walk the path with eyes open, ready to speak to yourself with strength. Ready to choose clarity over comfort, truth over approval, discipline over ease. No one can walk it for you, but you do not walk alone. Marcus, Epictetus, Seneca, they lit the way. Now it is your turn to carry the torch. Live with stillness, speak with courage, move with intention, and above all, choose to be the kind of person your future self will thank you for becoming.
If this message stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Write one thing down that you'll start doing this week. 2025 doesn't magically change anything you do, and your future begins the moment you decide to move, even just a little.